Alrighty then, it's time for a Heimerdinger game, and this one is a top lane donger one. Which one? And I gotta say, don't let this title piss you off or confuse you. I'll explain what I mean by it. Which the thing is, the other day, everyone was talking about the mage rework, the upcoming mage rework that Riot has planned, and some people were like, where is Heimerdinger? Why isn't he getting any changes? And the thing is, Heimerdinger isn't really overpowered or underpowered or anything. His issue is just sort of that he kind of doesn't really fit League of Legends. And it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to be a unique champion in League. I mean, you've got Shen being the only one who's got that kind of ultimate and whatnot. But the thing is, Heimerdinger is more of a, I'll just say, nuisance to the games he plays in. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Heimerdinger. He's probably is my de facto main mage. I just can't always find a reason to play him because he's just so weird. He alters the game for both his team and his opponents. See, the thing is, he's not overpowered or underpowered, but he has like this whole scaling, secret scaling to him. Do your opponents know how to deal with the Dong? If they do, then no problem. It doesn't matter. Just kind of be aware of that. If they don't, then you'll just like just destroy them. Like if your opponent doesn't realize that you do a lot of this hidden damage and your turrets can't be ignored, then they're gonna get absolutely hand blasted and you'll siege them and there's nothing they can do. You get dove by the enemy jungler and then they realize, holy shit, I just got murdered by these goddamn turrets that I was ignoring. Hell, even winning, quote unquote, winning against Heimerdinger still means you lose because the turrets might finish you off or something. So it's like this. He doesn't play by the rules that most pushers do. He doesn't play by most of the rules that most siege champions do either. See, if you compare siege champions, mages, and pushers to Heimerdinger, they're vastly different. See, the siege champions we have right now are sort of considered these super long-range champions that sort of artillery strike their way into the enemy team, right? We've got Kog'Maw, Xerath, and that kind of stuff. If you manage to actually catch them, you'll murder them quickly. They'll poke at you from a long distance and just chuck grenade or chuck bombs, chuck AoEs at you. But Heimerdinger, if you manage to catch him, there's a good chance you might have just put yourself in the lawnmower. He'll melt you. Hell, watch this. The Maokai is actually going to do that very soon enough against me. And it's not going to go very well against him. It's like a little science versus nature thing going on here. When it comes to pushing, Heimerdinger doesn't have this, massive lane kind of pushing he does. He doesn't. A lot of other pushers have spammable AoEs or really strong auto attacks or that kind of stuff. Heimerdinger doesn't really have that. His cooldowns are pretty bad. However, he sort of encroaches on the territory. He slowly moves the lane towards it, and you can't really push back unless you're very damn good at sniping the turrets and stuff. So him and his team can basically ensnare all your towers and slowly push against you, and it's kind of disgusting in a way. In this game, if my team didn't force me to group up a little bit sooner than normal, you'll see it soon enough, I would have probably bought Zizarod Portal. I don't actually remember though if it's still blocked. And I would have just tried pushing relentlessly. Anyone on their team who came at me who wasn't a carry, since most of them were tanks, and Twisted Fate, would probably get destroyed. They'd be melted. That's the other thing about Heimerdinger. And then when it comes to being a mage, most of his skills are just flat out unreliable, so you can't use him as a pure mage. And his cooldowns, again, are pretty goddamn awful. So he just plays by his own rules, right? And again, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but because of his super unique playstyle and the way he kind of alters the game for everyone else, it's kind of hard to find a way to support this champion or do anything with him. Like most of the items in the game, some of them really work out with him and others really don't. You can't just build anything willy-nilly with him. You kind of have to be smart about your build. So Riot has a little bit of a difficulty discovering anything that sticks on him, if they even want to bother. And if Heimerdinger is ever actually good, he sort of makes his world of Dawn can't be stopped. So he's not going to be seeing any reworks anytime soon, or possibly ever. I mean, any updates to him for the mage rework or anything. If there's ever any major rework in an attempt to make him super competitive or super duper viable for anyone to pick up, they would probably rework his turrets in some meaningful way. But otherwise, they just kind of cause him to be in this little turret defense mode of his. And again, it's nothing bad. He's fun for some players, not fun for a lot of players. Definitely not fun for people to play against, but he's ultimately harmless. Like if you see other champions like let's call it Teemo or a Nunu, they just kind of shitting down your throat, right? And it's kind of painful. There's very little you can do. Heimerdinger, you can outplay him. You can you can work around him. He's pretty easy to kill. It's just not fun to play against him. So that's the issue. Have at it what you will. As for me, I've played him since his release. If you guys didn't know, historically, he's one of the champions with the highest number of reworks if you count a lot of the tiny reworks. When he was released, his turrets could be put as 6 turrets, and you had to individually upgrade every single one. So you could plop down 6 turrets, and if they survive long enough, you can have 6 level 3 turrets, and anyone that got close would absolutely get murdered. You would have your little tiny nests in the bushes somewhere, and someone walks in, they just immediately die. His grenades could also attack turrets, so you could just put, no matter what, no one could stop you from pushing. In fact, most games became who had the better Heimerdinger. It was a dark time back then with Heimerdinger. His latest rework is surprisingly much more fair than he's ever been, even though he sometimes feels really, really unfair and really bothersome to play against. Now, again, in this game, I decided to play Heimerdinger mostly because I just kind of felt like it. The enemy team had Kog'Maw, Maokai, and Nautilus, and I decided, you know what, they might not really bother to kill me, and they might not have enough damage to kill me. Then they picked Twisted Fate, and then my dreams came crashing down, but fortunately they were kind of more focused on bothering the rest of my teammates than me. In team fights with Heimerdinger, you mostly just kind of stand in the backline and hope the enemy team blunders into you, because your team fighting potential is so goddamn awful. Like, how can I put it? How can I put this in an easy to digest way, or at least in a way that won't confuse you guys? His team fights are so abysmal in that if you're not set up, then you don't pretty much do anything. You're like a one spell kind of champion. You'll see that actually happen in this game soon enough when we fight near dragons, so keep your eyes out for that. I don't really do anything, but I managed to land a crucial spell that kind of changes the flow of the fight. But otherwise, there's another team fight in which I did have a chance to set up, and my presence in that game was far more dramatic. Though again, there was also going to be a third fight where I had no setup possible, and I was forced to chase. And then even then, my team fight, and as a result, my team fight just went kaput. That was pretty much jack dick I could do. So, again, he's just kind of a champion that just flows in the weirdest of ways. Like, you gotta set yourself up. You gotta commit to the siege, and your teammates have to be committed to the siege with you. In a kind of funny way, if you play Heimerdinger, you kind of become the leader of the team, or at least the spokesperson of the team, because everyone has to sort of work towards your whims to maximize your power, because that's your only real power. Nonetheless, you can see this game is kind of going sour. Like, they have a protect the team composition, and yeah, that's what really fucked up his his teleport fake out. They have a protect the team composition for the Kog'Maw, Maokai, Nautilus, and Braum. That's brutal. And Twisted Fate is able to pick off anyone who doesn't get killed, and basically manage to, and this gold card can help peel for the Kog'Maw. My team comp is all over the place. Zed, who will pretty much achieve nothing, me and Gragas, who keep failing our goddamn spells, and an overzealous Alistair. Fortunately though, the farm on my Lucian and the Zed isn't low. It's pretty good, although the Maokai has more, mostly because he's been eating my turrets. So all it would take is for us to be able to snipe people, pick someone off before a fight, and force it that way, because their damage is rather low unless Kog'Maw can go unchecked. So if we either kill Kog'Maw or deny him his defenders, so he's forced to run away and shit, then this game these fights will go our way. Anyways, as you can see, like, there's basically very little I could have done in that fight, mostly because I got chunked below and none of my spells are really all that goddamn useful, and I'm forced to chase people, and my turrets don't do anything. So that was not the best of fights for me. However, don't worry, that will change in the next round, as you will see. Either way, My team managed to get one really good turnaround fight against the enemy team, mostly because they committed without the full team. They committed without a cogma, and they basically were able to see that your protect compositions don't mean jack dick if the one person you're relying to do everything for you isn't actually there. We actually don't kill a goddamn inhibitor, so that's going to actually bite us in the ass a little bit, because the enemy team is able to defend it. And yeah, you can see my build. I'm going for the health shred, some huge AP, and the next time I'm going for the Liandry's Torment to burn down the fatties. Because I figure I'm not going to get any actual damage on the Cogmaw unless he's completely out of position. And so my turrets are hopefully, I got to give my turrets fuel to burn down the fatties in the front line. Anyways, Gragas gets picked off because he was trying to ward for Baron and keep an eye on it, and the enemy team is on a rampage once again. Now, it doesn't really ultimately matter because one of the best traits about Heimerdinger, and it seemingly is working against this protect composition, is if I'm alive, I can maintain the turret line rather well. Of course, if they chose to die at me, I'd probably die ridiculously fast and very brutally. So, nonetheless, as long as I have one protector, I could possibly maintain the defense of a turret just by myself. Anyways, my teammates engage, and we try to catch the enemy team. And watch this. This is what I meant by like the one kind of spell thing. Once again, I'm sort of forced to chase, so I don't really get to do very much. But Kog'Maw puts himself in a very bad line, so he gets smashed by the grenade directly alongside a few other members, and he gets absolutely rendered useless. Like, for the most part, my turrets did do some damage, but it's kind of, the team fight had already concluded. So I hope you sort of understand a little bit of the issue with Heimerdinger. I mean, if his spells do land, they do a pretty good amount of damage, but he really doesn't have the finishing power because they don't do enough, and at the same time, they're pretty hard to hit anyways. So that's kind of the problem with these fatties, is that they pretty much have a good chance of blocking my missiles anyways. We go for the Baron, Maoka comes through, and we manage to keep him at bay. Now with Baron, our victory is pretty much all but secured as long as we don't get absolutely murdered by Kog'Maw. Our next goal is to try to get a pick off. Even though we have Baron, all it takes is for them to CC our most important member right now, Lucian. And if he can't do any damage, then the rest of us will be absolutely murdered because all of our damage is pretty unreliable against his team. We initiate and they focus the Alistar, which is kind of a bad thing. They burn several key ultimates, but the two spread apart because the Alistar managed to keep them at bay, and this is where I actually get to have some fun. I managed to keep this fight in the middle here, at least where they are. My turrets get to have quite a fun time with the enemy team. You see, they're just blasting away at them. I'm able to chunk a few people down and deal quite a significant amount of damage alongside my teammates. So the enemy team basically gets absolutely wiped out. In that fight, we got to fight in a condition in which Heimerdinger excels. Now, of course, the main person who won that fight for us was kind of Alistar and Lucian. Alistar kept the important people at bay, and Lucian tore it to pieces. But in a situation like that, it's kind of what I mean by ideal for Heimerdinger. Either way, this video was mostly because I had Heimerdinger footage, and because Heimerdinger became a little bit of a topic for the for the mage's rework. And just kind of the fact that he's not gonna probably get any reworks anytime soon, and that's not really a problem. It's just, the League of Dong, so to speak. Hooray for him anyways.